What a great audience. This is amazing. Super excited.
Absolutely.
Lots of fun.
All right, Trish, we're 1 o'clock. Do you want to advance us to the first slide?
Yep, I gotcha.
Perfect. So thank you everybody for joining us. Very happy to see you all here. Today we want to go through the Cyber Incident Response Playbook. And as we both announced, our hosts are myself, Bruce Hunter, the Director of Managed Services here at Horizon, and Trish, who is going to advance the slide. There we are. Bishop, the Director of Professional Services. So we'll get rolling right away with some housekeeping items. You'll notice everybody is muted. The reason for that is we want the questions to come up in our question and answer sessions. You can find those at the top of your team screen. Questions are all monitored, but they are anonymous. You'll find that we're going to do a lot of polls today to get some engagement and some responses from you. Those are all anonymous as well. Camera and mic are turned off for each one. If you do want immediate impact, feel free to click the reaction buttons, thumbs up, thumbs down, smiley faces, laughter, whatever you like. We like to know people are engaged. So we'll advance to the first real impactful slide, and this is our first poll. And we want to know, why are you joining us today? So we're looking just for, one word as to why you're joining today. When we're done and we've seen the responses here, you can click on the X and you'll be able to close it off. All right, interested? All right, perfect. So really knowing more is what I'm seeing here.
Keep in mind, if you're looking at this on one monitor, the poll may come up on the monitor that has your team. So if you're not seeing it, it might just be on a different monitor for you.
Yeah, fair point. Thanks, Trish. Good. I see one there that said Dylan. There is Dylan. Okay, that's interesting. Dylan's not joining us today, I don't believe, and that's all right. Good. So let's go on from there. And again, not trying to speed you along, but just because we want to make sure we get through everything. So we really want to take a look at the problem. What is the problem today? The problem is obviously cyber threats. So we're going to take another quick poll here. And Trish, if you can just close your screen there. Okay, the new one came up. Perfect. So I want you to select where you're at today as far as how you feel your organization is ready to deal with a cyber attack if one was to occur. Trish, I think you'll need to just select one there so we can see the responses coming up.
They should be coming up on everybody's view. I can't actually move mine over onto that screen. Sorry about that.
It's not a problem.
As soon as somebody submits,
because I'm looking at your shared screen. It's actually on mine. My apologies, everybody. All right. So the gist of it, the majority of people, is it might not be pretty, but we'll get it done. That's better than not being ready at all. Mm-hmm. However, I think everybody can do a little bit better than that. And that's why we're here today, is to understand what we can do in a better fashion to be more prepared so we can get back up and running quicker and have less downtime. So if you click over to the next slide there, Trish, this next slide is courtesy of one of our MSP partners, Barracuda Networks. They've done a lot of research. They are a security company, and what they've seen is that there's two primary portions to protecting an environment. One is your hardware, your policies, your device management. That's 60% of the protection. The other 40%, though, is the end users knowing how to respond. And that's not just how do you prevent a phishing email from infiltrating, but it's what do you do once an attack has occurred? How do you then respond to that? Do you unplug the firewall? The answer is no. What do you do first? And making sure that everybody knows their role. So to that end, when we talk about the awareness training, we're going to do another poll here, and we want to know, does your organization currently provide cyber awareness training to all of the staff? Wow. Okay, that's great.
It is
All
really
right,
good.
seeing a couple more come through there, dropping that down a little bit.
Yep.
But overall, that's solid, and that is a big change in what it was 2, 3, 5 years ago. So that's really positive to see, everybody. And anybody that has not got it in place, I do highly recommend that you put it in place as soon as possible, because human error is the main cause of 95% of cybersecurity breaches. And that number, that 95%, is from two independent sources, one being IBM, the other being the Canadian government. So 95% are human error, and that is our biggest gap and the biggest concern. So when we look at that, again, Proofpoint is another one of our MSP partners here, and they again have provided us with this data, is 85% of the security professionals. So that's your IT providers, whether you have an MSP partner, you have an internal resource, 85% of the security professionals said that most employees know they are responsible for security. So that's the general staff. They believe that everybody knows that they're responsible, but 59% of those users either weren't sure or claim that they're not responsible at all, meaning that all the protection is behind the scenes. They can do whatever they want without being educated and being cognizant of their actions and the impact that might have. So we're going to do another quick poll here. So we've talked about the education side, and combined with that, do we run regular phishing campaigns, those test campaigns, to assess people's knowledge? So it's one thing to make sure that the education's available. It's another to make sure that the knowledge is settling in and that cyber awareness is front of mind for all users.
Also a stronger response. That's excellent.
Yeah, but you know what I'm noticing is that the number of yeses here are lower than the cyber awareness training, meaning that we're not validating the knowledge in the same fashion. Okay, and that validation ensures that people are paying attention to what they're reading when they're taking that training, because they need it to be able to pass those phishing campaign examples and those simulations. Good. Excuse me. So 71% of users have taken a risky action. What's scarier is that 96% of them knew they were doing something risky. So it's not that 71% that it was an unknown, they made a mistake. They were aware that there was potential risk. Not necessarily that there was immediate threat, but there was potential risk. Now this slide, when it was created, I challenged because I thought it was a crazy number, did some research, found out that I was wrong. 72% of small businesses had some form of a cyber attack in 2022, and 45% of those were random, 27% were targeted. And a common thing I hear from the businesses that I engage with is they say, I'm too small, nobody's going to go after me, it's not worth it. They're going to go after the Fortune 500 companies, they're going to go after casinos. The random attacks are almost double the target attacks, and those are those brute force attempts, just banging on doors to see if there's an opening to engage. Then they will evaluate how far down the rabbit hole they want to go once they're in your environment. These reported attacks. Oh, sorry, Trish.
Oh, I was just going to say those are Canadian small businesses too, just as an FYI for everyone.
Yes,
yeah.
Thank
Apologies,
you.
Bruce.
No, not at all. That's perfect. One thing I do want to make sure that qualify here, those 72% of all Canadian small businesses that experienced a cyber attack, those were not necessarily successful attacks. Those are reported either successful attacks or attempted attacks. So that's what we're talking about there when we talk 72%. Okay. So looking at Q2 of 2023 and then Q2 of 2024, there has been a 30% increase in weekly attacks on corporate networks. So we're seeing this whole landscape growing because it is a business model that is making a lot of people very wealthy at the expense of others. This is criminal activity, but it's one that people are profiting from, and that's why we're seeing the rise. And we're seeing the rise because it's successful in both the penetration of an environment as well as the gaining of the funds when the ransom is requested. All right, so really what you need to take away from this short snippet portion that we've discussed here, we've done the polls and we've reviewed, is every organization has risk, every single one. You cannot get away from risk in today's technology world any more so than you could in the past having an antivirus. That was always a deterrent and a risk mitigator. It was never a guarantee. And you have to be prepared because everybody will have attacks posed against the organization, not necessarily successfully, but this is the reality of today's world. With that, I'm going to be quiet, or try to be, for a little while, and hand it over to Trish.
I wasn't, so what do you need to be? It's all good.
Just I'll try.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Bruce. Appreciate that. And just FYI, I just want to put out a thank you to Tasneem, our teammate who's been running the polls for us. So really appreciate the help in behind the scenes as well. That's great. So we do want to talk about the solution. Now, before I jump into the solution, because I know people get this in their head and they're like, oh, I'm going to be in this webinar and then I'm going to get a sales pitch at the end. Nah, we're not doing that. We're just going to give you the information right now so that you understand what it is that we're working with. So you can just kind of put that aside and be focused on what is actually in the Cyber Incident Playbook. And there's a lot of stuff that you can take away. We'll make this recording available to you. Even if you choose not to get the playbook, there's information that we're going to be sharing with you that you can take away and start to implement immediately in your organization. We want you to get value from your participation in this webinar. So purchasing this is not a requirement by any stretch, but we want to let you know what the options are available to you. So it is a self-paced package, and I'll go through that as I show the next few slides, meaning you can just purchase all the tools and templates, and then your team can build out the playbook itself. Okay, so you can just figure out all the information that you need to plug in. It very much is template oriented. You can, it's free for our MSP clients. So some of you may are our MSP clients, we know, and you know, that's complimentary capability or a value add for those clients. There's also the option to have a workshop where you can build the plan in a day, or you could engage one of our team members to come and work with you to develop it in collaboration with your team. So there's lots of options there available, but it's $1,000 just for the tools and templates package, and then you can go from there. Okay, sales pitch done, painless. All right, so increasing your cyber resilience, of course, is the first solution, all right? However, that's another webinar for another day. We're not going into that one today because it's a deep dive, but keep your eyes open for that because we'd love to see you again. All right, the Cyber Incident Playbook, this is built in PowerPoint. The reason for that is the playbook should always be in a printed format. Basically, as Bruce likes to say, if a cyber incident occurs, you're back to rock, paper, scissors, and he's actually not wrong. So we want to have a printed version of this. So we chose PowerPoint for a number of reasons, primarily because in order to make this available to you as a self-developed capability, you'll notice that we have all kinds of information down here in the notes section. Those include instructions, anecdotes, ideas, things that your team can use to make sure you understand how to complete the playbook. Okay, so the playbook itself is in a PowerPoint format. We have other tools and templates as well. This is just a couple of examples of some of the things that you can expect to see in the playbook. So the internal response team org chart, you would modify this. As you notice, there's lots of places in here, lots of room to add people's names based on who's playing the various roles. You would modify this org chart based on how your organization works, which roles you can fulfill. For smaller organizations, you may not be able to fulfill all these roles. For larger organizations, you typically will. So you'll be able to adjust this org chart to meet the needs of your organization. There's also an external response org chart. Your cyber insurance company may identify a forensic investigator or a negotiator if it's a ransomware attack, and you would want to include those resources in your external org chart, and that template is also available in the playbook. This is an example of a contact sheet. So when we talk about being able to contact primarily your cyber incident response team members, you want to make sure that you have their contact information 24/7. So for individuals who may be internal employees that are part of your team, you would want a personal email address. If they have a home phone, you may want that if in addition to a mobile device. So making sure that you have all of that contact information that is not reliant on your network. You're not going to be able to just tag them in Teams or send them an email. You have to be able to communicate with them outside of your network capabilities. This is an example of the communications matrix. Now, one of the things that the feedback that we've received, and this was done by design, I've been a project manager for over 30 years. And what I know is that when tools of this nature are too deep, too detailed, it's too much of a heavy lift for organizations. They're never going to get around to getting it built out as it needs to be built out. So it just actually never gets done, and it just becomes shelfware. We don't want that to happen. So you'll see if you've ever done a communications plan, in my experience, they're much more complex than what you see here. But this version is extremely simplified to make sure that you can just get the meat of what you need, right? We're not trying to, build it and they will come. We're just trying to have the information we can get so that if an event were to happen, you can get out of the gate literally within an hour or two, and your team is off and running in terms of remediation. So this is an example of that. You can see there's audiences, the mechanism, how are we contacting them? How often are we contacting them? Who's contacting them? So there's a number of matrices that we have available for you. And here's Dylan. I don't know who was looking for Dylan, but here he is. He's right there. And he's touching the Cyber Response Kit. Which he's not supposed to be doing, by the way. Cyber Response Kit, do not touch. And what we mean there is we have a bunch of things that are in there, and that's in the template, how to build your kit. That is your rock, paper, scissors. And we want to make sure nobody's taking things out of there because they know they can grab a marker if they need one. So Dylan, our favorite guy. We love Dylan. Okay, so here's some of the templates. The first is an incident response information sheet. So again, make these what you need them to be for your organization. In essence, what we're communicating here is, what do you do as a first response? Bruce alluded to this earlier. In essence, if something were to happen, don't touch anything. You don't want to unplug anything unless you're told to, right? And unless and until you're told to. Don't unplug, don't turn off, don't reboot, because all of those things can have an impact on the ability to do the forensic investigation. So it basically is a crime scene. Step away. Don't touch anything. A lot of people don't know that. I didn't know that before we started to build that out. And I've been in this game a very long time. So, that's one thing that a lot of staff wouldn't know. The first response would be, reboot, make it go away. And that's not what we want to do. In addition, we ask people to send this to their personal email address. So as an employee, I know what to expect in the case of a cyber incident. I may be asked to go home. There's all kinds of other things that may happen. So you would build out this template and modify it to suit the needs of your organization, but it has the basic pieces here that you need. There's also the Cyber Incident Response Checklist. This is specifically for your Cyber Incident Response team, which we're going to get into in a few minutes. This basically covers the key things that your team needs to be looking at to get out of the gate quickly. So they can just grab the cyber kit that we just saw, get into the room that's been designated for your project room, and off to the races you go. Business continuity plan template. This is super valuable for your organization, even outside of a cyber incident. If there was flooding or some other major event that happens, you may want to have these business continuity plans in place because it allows you to be operational, even in the instance where there's something that's preventing you, whether it's cyber event or other disaster that has happened. Wherever you can continue to be operational, you want to make sure that you are, and you don't have to run around trying to figure out how to do that, that you already have the plan in place for it. Some policies that we provide to you, again, templates. I'm going to run a quick poll here first. So we're just wondering, does your organization provide a password management tool? See some of the responses here. Okay, yep. More responses coming in. Excellent. Yeah. So we've got more no's than yeses. And I would say that this is definitely an area that your organization would want to look at. This one with regards to passwords. Now, we've provided a template policy here. If you have a password manager tool, then you can make the policy be as strict as you want. You have to use the password manager tool. Your password manager tool has to generate your passwords to make sure they're safe, or passphrases. However, if you don't have a password manager tool, the template that we provide to you actually provides some guidance on how to create a good solid password based on today's parameters around good password composition. So this is a template, again, that you can use depending on what you need to do for your organization. Okay, another quick poll on multi-factor authentication. Super curious to see this one too. This is always one that's interesting. Ooh, nice. Let's see how these responses play out. So oh, this is looking good on the MFA. I love it.
Sorry, Trish, I am going to not stay quiet for one quick second. So one thing that is a common challenge when we look at MFA is it enforced to the users with some exceptions, or is it organizationally enforced? And that's something that nobody needs to change response or anything else, but it's just something to consider, is if it's not organizationally enforced, it is not entirely secure and it defeats the purpose to a great degree.
Yep. Thank you. So the MFA one is important. And I will say, if any of you are leaders and you're of the mind that the MFA is frustrating, if you can just keep in mind, I know for me personally, anything that my security teams tells me to do, I'm doing it. I'm going to push back if it's getting in my way, but an MFA that takes 10, 15 seconds to complete, I do not want to be the person who's at the root cause of an event. So I'm going to take those extra 10 or 15 seconds. And I'm also setting a good tone for the rest of the organization, because I'm like, oh, just hang on 1 second. I just got to finish my MFA here. Literally, if I'm on a Teams meeting like this, I'll stop the team and say that. And then people understand, yeah, okay, well, Trisha's taking the time, so I'm going to take the time. So it just sets a good tone for people. So just a reminder for that, for the leaders in the room as well. Okay, so here's the multi-factor authentication policy. Again, a template, modify it to suit the needs of your organization. These are all included in the package. Okay, welcome to the Cyber Incident Response team. So what I'm going to go through here now, I'm not going to go into a lot of detail on these, but these basically are, I see that we had a question there. I'm going to address that when we're done there. So thank you very much, whoever sent that. And please feel free to send your Q&As in, and we'll get to them at the end.
Sorry, one more interruption, Trish.
Yeah, go ahead.
Just for everybody, if you'd like to remain anonymous on your questions, please do put them in the Q&A portion as opposed to the chat. We will still answer the chat ones, but it does not provide you with any anonymity. But you know what I'm saying. We know who you are. We know who you are.
And if you don't care, that's awesome.
I'll mute myself again. Bye.
No, that's great. It's a great reminder. Thanks for that, Bruce. So we're going to go through the various roles, but before I jump into this, a couple of things that I want to point out. Each of these slides I'm about to go through, you're going to see a document on there. You don't need to read it. It's just to give you a sense that we do have a roles and responsibilities document for each of these roles. The next piece that I want you to understand is, if your organization is smaller, you may not have enough people. If you have like 7 people in your organization, you may not have enough people to fulfill all of these roles, and that's okay. In some instances, and I'll mention which roles aren't necessary in a smaller organization. In other instances, you may combine roles. So you may have somebody playing an incident response manager role and a business lead role, for example. So in some cases, you can combine them. So if you have a smaller organization and I'm going through these roles and you're like, oh, we don't have that many people, don't worry about it. You can just combine those capabilities for a single individual. Okay, so just keep that in mind as we're going through this. All right, so the first one that we have is the incident response manager. This is a key role that is basically the primary conduit through which all activity with regards to remediation is happening. This person is at the center of everything. So they have to be very well organized. They have to be perceived as an informal leader, even if they may or may not be a formal leader. But it's important that they're an informal leader, because people will naturally gravitate to those informal leaders. You want to make sure they have that cachet internally so that people will make sure that they are kept up to speed on everything that's happening. So that informal leader capability, whether they're a formal leader or not, is super important for this particular role. And they are generally the conduit to your president, CEO, whatever, to make sure that they're kept up to date on all of the activities and any decisions that need to be made. The next role is an incident response coordinator. This person is kind of an extra set of hands for the incident response manager and will be assigned to a number of different tasks that they need to keep on track. If you're a smaller organization, you don't need this role. Okay, so that's one that you could not go forward with if you chose to. Technical lead role. If you have internal IT staff, then it's going to be your internal role. If you are outsourced to a managed services provider, then they generally will be your technical lead. Okay, so however you're structured, just make sure that whoever that technical lead is, that they know that that's their responsibility, and that everybody should be familiar with the roles and responsibility documents that are available through this. And you would edit and modify those to suit the needs of your organization, of course, as well. There'll be a financial officer role. So this role will be very, very key if for example, there was a ransomware attack. However, there's also a number of various, how do I want to say it, expenses that happen as a result, because ultimately, most organizations engage, like I know Horizon has been engaged a number of times, way more than I would have liked to have seen this year, to assist with remediation. So there's a cost to that. Sometimes, you're engaging different consultants, the forensic investigator, the negotiator, those are all going to have costs associated with them. So part of the package is we actually give you a template that helps you to be able to see, oh, wow, that's what the cost would be to bring these consultants in to help us with our remediation. Then you can get over the sticker shock. The last thing that you want to have happen is once the incident has occurred, everybody's like in, panic mode, the adrenaline's high. You don't want to add chaos, right? You want to really be just focused on what it is that you need to do. So if you can get over the sticker shock now, then when the incident occurs, the financial resource is basically tracking those expenses and making sure that things are moving forward as they need to, and communicating that to the incident response manager and the president or CEO as necessary, so that they're keeping track of all those expenses. There is a business lead role. So the business lead role is really going to be working with those business units that can continue to be operational in the case of an event. So this goes back to our business continuity plans, and there is a business continuity lead. This is another set of roles that could be combined, right? If you're a smaller organization. So this business lead role is really going to work with those different organizations or departments within the company to say, hey, let's get you up and running on your business continuity plan. Let's make sure we're operational even during remediation. There's also a communications lead role. This person may not be the person doing all of the communications, but they are the person who will develop the communication plan. I showed you the matrix several slides ago, as well as making sure that all the communications that have been identified are happening. So whoever was identified as being the who to send out a communication to a certain audience, they're making sure that those communications are going out as per the defined timeline, as per the defined channel, and the person who needs to send it out. So that's going to be what their role is responsible for. Our human resources lead role is you're going to have staff, if they've been sent home, for example, wanting to know, am I getting paid during this time? There's a lot of questions and uncertainty for staff, and we want to make sure that they feel psychologically safe during the remediation period. So this HR lead role is very much going to be responsible for answering those questions so that they can make sure that staff questions and concerns are being taken care of while the rest of the team is focused on the remediation and getting back up operational. And finally, our business continuity lead role. This role will be active on a constant basis because they should be working with leaders of all the various business units that can continue operations in the case of a disaster of any type, and building out those business continuity plans. As an organization, you should be looking at what can continue to be operational and in what instances, and there should be a plan in place in order to make that happen. Right. So just working through those templates, building them out, and then making sure that they are up to date when this plan is reviewed on ideally a quarterly basis to make sure all of the information is current. Okay, so I'm going to hand it back over to Bruce, and we're going to bring it home.
Sorry, Bruce was not ready, but he is here. I was just reading through some of the questions there. That was my challenge there. So what are the things you can do today? What are the things that you can engage with that in some cases are free, some cases they have small licensing subscriptions that are required that you don't need us necessarily to do it. You can do a lot of these yourselves. So we'll click over to the next one here. So there's tons of different programs that you can engage with for the cyber awareness, the cybersecurity, subscription services, lunch and learns, and keeping it simple. I'll avoid the second S, but we all know what it stands for. The point is to make sure that there's communication with that awareness through your staff. And those programs and subscriptions and services, there are tons of them out there. The most important part is that there is a phishing campaign, a false phishing campaign to test people, and there's training, and you have that cadence of the two of them to ensure that it is kept at the front of mind. We're all very busy. We all receive way too many emails, and it's very easy to click on a phishing email. Next one. Implementing a strong password policy. If you don't have one now, highly recommend you get one. And when we look to this, we're looking to passphrases for ensuring that we have a password that is not so simple that somebody can guess it. Using your dog's name and the year you were born is not a good password. Using password 123, again, I can't imagine anybody here is doing that. It used to be something quite common. You want to use those alphanumeric passwords. So a combination of letters, numbers, special characters, capitals, and lowercase letters. Okay, so really want to make sure you have that. And you should have your passwords audited regularly. When passwords are audited, it's amazing how common it is that there are shared passwords amongst different team members. That's a huge problem. An implementation of multi-factor authentication, that has to be done at the top level. And when we say the top level, we mean the leaders. So the CEOs, the presidents, they have to engage in it. And unfortunately, for anybody that is a CEO or president here, I'm going to pick on you a little bit. Those are the ones that give the most pushback. They don't want to be inconvenienced with having to use it. It is crucial that it is set at the organizational enforcement level, as opposed to trying to have half the team that are willing to do it engage with it, half the team not doing it because it's too much of a hassle. One of the big challenges that I have heard is people will say, it's my device. I don't want to have any business information on my phone that isn't being compensated for by work. It needs to become part of a policy as well. And that policy then guides that HR process to ensure that staff know about this when they're brought on board. This is part of the deal. You want access to corporate data from your phone, such as email, OneDrive, Teams, SharePoint, you have to have MFA put in place. Otherwise, you can't access it. It's that easy. Well, it's not that easy. That's what should be said. Start building the Cyber Incident Response Playbook today. Today, you've seen what we're recommending from a very high level without getting into all the details. I highly recommend, regardless if you take us up on the offer of what we present to our total care clients with that complimentary Cyber Incident Response Plan Playbook, which is a mouthful, my apologies, but you need to have a plan. And I think we can all agree to that from what we're seeing here today, is some form of a plan is absolutely crucial to know who's who and who's taking responsibility for what area of the business.
I'm gonna jump in here on this one, Bruce. So
Yeah.
what I want you to think about, and we put this out if you guys saw our social posts on this. This question came up regularly, and it's interesting when I ask this question of organizations when they say, "Oh yeah, we're good to go. We have a DR plan." Okay, which is not the same. It's not the same as a cyber incident playbook or response playbook. So the question I want you to think about is, as an organization, if a cyber event were to happen today, do you have all of your client and staff personal or direct contact information? So for your client, it would be their contact information, right? Which is standard. Your staff, it'll be their personal contact information. Do you have that available offline? Right. So I'll ask the question. I'll say, hey, how are you gonna reach out to your clients? Well, I'm just gonna go to the CRM. No, you don't have access to your CRM. And then it's like silence. So I want you to think about that, because that is one of those tactical things. We want to give you tactical things you can literally walk away with today, where you can start to implement these kinds of things. What is the mechanism? At what frequency is that information being updated in an offline capacity, so you can contact all of your staff at a personal contact, email, phone, whatever, and contact all of your vendors, your partners, your clients? Do you have that contact information offline? Because if it's just in your systems and something happens, you do not have access to that information. So that's definitely one of those pieces that we want to make sure that you're thinking through, because that is one of those keys to business continuity, meaning you can continue operations in some capacities as you move through that. So, okay, I'm going away now, Bruce.
No, it's true though. If you don't have access to your AR, your AP, your calendar, your client list, your vendor list, what do you do, right? So these are crucial things to consider and to think about. So if you didn't take advantage of this, now this is something we did have on the LinkedIn posts and such. I do recommend that you take a look at the Cyber Readiness Maturity Assessment. It'll give you an understanding of where you're at today through a series of questions, through that maturity level. And that's what we want to really make sure you understand is, are you in good shape, or do you need some work to be put into it? And it gives you a series of questions that you can go through, and each one really prompts you to think about some of the points that Trish was just making there. We have one last poll coming out for you, is we want to know, in one word, how are you feeling now?
These are good.
Yeah. A real variety
These are
too.
Yep. Yep.
You know, and the interesting thing is one of the people that we went through the full Cyber Incident Response Plan playbook with, he thanked us and then said, also thank you for the fact that I know I won't sleep tonight. So it's common for people to be concerned, but the concern, the feeling of uneasy, of worried, frightened, and all of these different things, they come from a place of a lack of preparation. And that's all it is. So there's an easy way to fix that, is you need to get prepared. That's how
And
you
I
would
think,
correct this.
yeah, I think the key with this, having the playbook in place, too many times, again, as a project manager, where events have happened in my career, people spend, if there is not a plan and people have not been identified for specific roles and we don't know what the next step is, there's too much time that is wasted with positioning and jockeying and political, I want to be the one in charge. And, there's all this stuff that happens, and then you're tripping over lack of process and you're just wasting time. The faster that the organization can get out of the gate, everybody knows their role, everybody knows what they need to do, the plan is there. Even if it's not perfect, it's better than nothing. You can get out of the gate really, really quickly and get into remediation. And more importantly, get those areas of the business that can be operational even when you're offline up and running, so you can continue to get revenue or whatever else it is that your organization can keep doing. So the goal with this is getting out of the gate quickly, right? That is what we want you to do. And we don't want you to make you worried. We don't want to be the people who make you worried. And we're passionate about keeping small business safe. That is a huge passion for us. We want to keep you safe and do whatever we can to make that happen. So the toolbook, the playbook, if you go and look at the cyber assessment, you're going to get a sense, even just reading it, of some of the things you can do within your organization to make your organization more cyber resilient, to get ready to be able to do some of these things. So reverse engineer some of those pieces that are in there and start with some of these tactical things. You don't need to boil the ocean. You don't need to do it all at once. You can just bite it off piece by piece. But I do ask that you take some steps towards that. And to Bruce's point, it's when you have a plan, you feel a lot more confident, because once it's happened, there's nothing you can do, right? You can't undo it. So the best thing to do is to be ready and prepared. That 40% that we saw early on in the deck, you need to be prepared in case something happens. Alrighty. So Bruce, we have some Q&A questions here.
Yeah. Yeah, the first one I see here is with MFA, what's the best practice for regularly changing passwords? And it's a great question, because that's something that is a hot topic. It used to be that you should be changing every 30 days, 60 days, 90 days. In recent times, Microsoft has actually changed their stance on that with the implementation of MFA, which is to that question's point, because what was happening is people were suffering from password fatigue, and trying to change a password, keep track of it. And to an earlier point, and one of the polls that we had, without a password manager, people begin bad practice. And that bad practice revolves around having common, easy to guess passwords so they can remember them, or having sticky notes on their monitors with their passwords, which, as it turns out, isn't terribly secure. So the best practice now is to look at this, is to have complex passwords that are generated by a password tool, and making sure you have MFA in place. Having those complex passwords makes it much more difficult for an AI process or a program to crack the password. So you want to have a very complex password, and you want to make sure that you have the password manager to support that. With that in place, changing a password once a year is more than satisfactory. But without MFA, I would be looking to make sure you have a very strong password policy in place to enforce that policy from the group policy within your server environment. And I would make sure that you change it every 60 days without MFA in place.
So we have another question. Are there roles that shouldn't be combined to maintain segregation of duties or avoid conflicts of interest? Great question. The roles and responsibilities documents in general are 1 to 2 pages. So they're not overly extensive, enough there for people to know what they're responsible for. I would say as a general proposition, your incident response manager role and your financial officer role should not be the same role. You can totally combine your HR and communications role. You don't need the incident response coordinator role. Other than that, I think you're in pretty good shape, but it's a great question. And when you look at combining roles for smaller organizations, you can just go kind of, oh, okay, that needs to be addressed. So just chuck it into one of the other roles. The segregation of duties thing, I would say the financial officer is the one that should be separate, probably for the most case. Anything else, I don't think there's going to be too much of a crossover that you're going to need to worry about, but really, really good question. Do you want to grab the next one, Bruce?
Yeah, so this one I'm going to be interpreting a wee bit. What can be offered for a nonprofit like a sport organization? The plan is still required. The plan remains the same. You know, what really can be leveraged for a nonprofit is there are a number of nonprofit solutions when it comes to Microsoft licensing and Adobe licensing and such. But with the Microsoft licensing, I would be suggesting that you do take advantage of the business premium level of licensing to get that advanced security in place to ensure that you have the MFA, and you can then add on additional security pieces. But the biggest benefit for a nonprofit is that I want to say it's free for the first 10 licenses and deeply discounted for any additional licenses. So that would help address that portion of it. But I'm not really sure what the direct intent was of the question, if there was something more specific.
Yeah. The other piece that we've seen with some of the nonprofits, which may or may not be applicable for the person who asked this question, is there's often a calendar of events that is applicable to, and I mean, that could be any business, right? I just know some of the nonprofits we have spoken to, they've mentioned that. And so as much as we want to have that offline list of how we contact our staff, how we contact our clients, we also may want to have that offline calendar capability. So if there is a calendar of events, again, that's that operational, it can still work offline. And, you know, whether you're exporting it once a week or whatever that looks like, the frequency would depend on the type of business you have. One last comment I want to make, you know, so Bruce, you had spoken to when we shared this with our MSP clients, and somebody said, I couldn't sleep tonight. The other thing that we heard was from a client that had experienced in their past a cyber event. They basically said that this hit all the marks. So they had been through it, right? They had struggled with lack of process. They had struggled with not necessarily having all of the pieces that they needed. And they were super grateful because they're like, okay, I don't need to build this. We have it now. So that's one of those things that, that was a huge validation for the tool, and to know that we were giving them kind of that peace of mind was a huge win. So we were super happy about that. So that's the other side of that conversation too.
Yeah,
okay.
Absolutely.
All right. You want to close her off, Bruce?
Sure. Well, I just want to take one final opportunity to thank everybody for coming today and spending time with us. I know it's a lot of information. I get it. If you do have any questions or want to discuss this further, we're happy to continue the conversation. Feel free to reach out to myself directly. I'll throw out my email address right now. It's bhunter@horizon.ca. More than happy to get together and have a coffee. If you're feeling stressed out and need a little bit of counseling, we'll set up a little group session or something. But this is very important stuff, and it's a topic that isn't going away. So we do need to make sure that we're helping out wherever we can.
Awesome. Thank you all so much. Really appreciate it. We'll make sure that you get a copy of the recording. So please feel free to share it with your teams, other business people that you think about that may be struggling with this area. And we're happy to provide any additional information that you need. And we'll follow up in case there's any other questions as well. Have a great day, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.